love you.
I love you too.
Have you been a good girl?
This morning was very sad. After what took place at the cemetery, everyone was quiet. This visit wasn't just a normal quiet one. It looked like everyone in the world stopped to watch. Charlie's parents went to see his grave today. Many people hadn't seen them in public since the funeral. On this day, September 28, 2025, people had been waiting for this moment for weeks, wondering how the family was doing and if they would say anything. The sky was gray and heavy, just like the mood of the day. The grass was wet from the rain last night, and the air was sharp and cold, which made it hard to breathe. With each step there was a soft crunch. The flowers on graves nearby moved because the wind was light. The reporters stood quietly, cameras ready but not intruding. It felt like they understood that this moment wasn't about getting the perfect shot, but about showing respect. Some people were watching from their phones and laptops as live streams began. In the chat, messages started rolling in. Prayers for the family, sending love. This is so hard to watch. You could see hearts and candles popping up on the screen as viewers tried to send some kind of comfort from miles away. Then finally you saw them. Charlie's mom and dad walking slowly side by side, holding white roses. His father looked down almost the entire time, his hands gripping the flowers tightly. His mom held hers close to her chest like she didn't want to let go. Neither of them spoke a word as they walked. The closer they got, the quieter it seemed to get. People who were standing nearby shifted back a step or two. Even the camera shutter slowed down. You could almost feel the weight of every footstep they took. When they reached the grave, everything went still. The headstone stood out against the green grass, perfectly white, with Charlie's picture and name engraved. The date still felt too fresh, too real. Charlie's mom knelt down slowly. Her hand shook as she placed the white roses carefully at the base of the stone. Then she stayed there staring, not moving. Her fingers traced the letters of his name, and her shoulders started to tremble. Her husband crouched down next to her and put one hand on her back as if trying to hold her together. He kept his head down for a long moment and then finally looked up at the stone. You could see his face change, his lips pressed together. His chest rose and fell sharply. Then he lowered his head and rested his forehead against the stone. There was no sound except the wind. A few people in the crowd turned away, wiping their eyes. Someone put a hand over their mouth. Some turned away, visibly moved. Even members of the security team stepped back a little, letting the parents have their space. Minutes passed. It wasn't quick. This wasn't staged for cameras or rushed because of time. It was raw and real. You could see years of memories on their faces on social media. Comments were flooding in faster now. People were writing things like, "I can't hold back tears. Stay strong. We're with you." And this is one of the hardest moments to watch. Clips from the live stream were being reposted within minutes, gaining thousands of views as the world shared the moment. A small group of supporters who had been standing back walked closer, but still kept a respectful distance. Some were holding candles. Others held pictures of Charlie from rallies and events. They didn't say anything. They just stood still, heads bowed. One woman started quietly humming a hymn. Others joined in softly, just enough to be heard. Charlie's mom looked up for a second, her eyes wet, and nodded at them. It was a small moment, but it connected everyone there. From a distance you could see more people arriving. News vans lined up outside the cemetery entrance, but nobody was loud or disruptive. Cemetery staff kept everyone back so the family could stay in a private space. Reporters on live television were explaining why this moment mattered. They reminded viewers that Charlie's passing had deeply affected the country. His funeral drew a massive crowd and thousands more watched online. Seeing his Terrence now reopened those emotions. After a while, Charlie's dad stood up and stepped back. He rubbed his eyes with one hand, then put the other on the top of the stone one last time. His mom stayed kneeling a few seconds longer. Before slowly rising, she touched the flowers again, arranging them neatly, then kissed the top of the stone. It was such a small gesture, but it said everything without words. Even the camera crew seemed to hold their breath. Nobody rushed to get the perfect shot. It felt like everyone there was caught up in the weight of the moment. The live stream chat was now full of people sharing their own experiences. Some wrote about losing siblings or children. Others simply typed, "This moment is so emotional." The comment section felt like a public memorial right there in real time. Back at the grave, Charlie's parents stayed a few minutes more. His father put his arm around his wife's shoulders and just stood there with her. They didn't speak, at least not loud enough for anyone to hear. They just looked down at the grave together, holding on to each other. Then they both stepped back slowly, carefully, like it was hard to walk away. The crowd stayed quiet, waiting to see if they would say anything. But for now it was just silence. The air felt heavy. Even through the screen you could feel it. It left everyone wondering what would happen next. Whether this was just a visit or whether the family might finally speak to the public. For a second it looked like they were going to leave. Charlie's mom and dad stood together a few steps back from the grave in silence. No one in the small group moved. Then something that wasn't planned happened. Charlie's dad took a deep breath, looked at the people around him, and then stepped forward again. At first, his voice was soft as if he were only talking to himself. But soon everyone could hear him. He said, "Thanks for being here." His voice broke when he said, "Thank you." He was trying to stay strong and fight back tears. Then he said, "This is an incredibly difficult moment for any parent. We miss him every day." People in the crowd nodded their heads. Some people held hands. Some of them were now crying out loud. Since Charlie died, it was unusual for him to talk about this openly. Then he said something that caught everyone's attention. "I know people are angry. I know a lot of you want answers. So do we. But please, let's focus on remembering what he stood for." You could feel the shift in the air. Even people online paused before typing. The comments section slowed down for a few seconds, like everyone was processing what he just said. Charlie's mom moved closer to him and held his arm while he talked. He said, "We are helping the investigators. We want to know what happened and why it happened, but we also want peace. We can't let anger erase what he stood for." For a few seconds the crowd was quiet. After that, some people began to clap softly at first. More people joined in, and soon almost everyone was clapping, some with tears in their eyes. This moment spread quickly on the internet. Clips of what his dad said went viral on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok in just a few minutes. "We can't let hate win" became popular. People who had never followed Charlie before were sharing the video and talking about how powerful the words were. News channels picked it up too. Within an hour, anchors were replaying the clip and discussing what it meant for the case, for the family, and for the public. Legal analysts were invited to comment live. One said, "This is an important message. The investigation is still ongoing and emotions are very high. The family's call for calm could prevent a lot of tension from escalating." Another analyst explained that authorities are still carefully reviewing the footage. From the day of the incident, checking timestamps and cross-referencing witness statements. Requests for records were made for communication records, and specialists are still reviewing digital evidence from the scene. This gave people at home some comfort that things were moving forward. People were worried that things were going too slowly. Hearing that requests for records were made out and that investigators were checking evidence against each other reminded them that the process was still going on. Charlie's dad continued speaking for a few more minutes. He thanked the supporters who had come to the cemetery. He asked for prayers not just for their family but for everyone involved. "We pray for strength," he said, "and we pray for truth." His mom added a few words too. Her voice was quiet but clear. Charlie wouldn't want us to live in anger forever. She said he believed in bringing what people together, not tearing them apart. "Please keep remembering him that way." The crowd responded with more applause. Some people hugged. Others just stood still, wiping tears from their faces. It was a moment no one expected when they woke up that morning. Online reactions were overwhelming. One user wrote, "I wasn't even a supporter before, but this family just showed real strength." Another said, "This is what leadership looks like. Grace in pain." Thousands of comments echoed the same thing. Respect for the parents' composure. Reporters later said, "This was the first time the parents had spoken publicly since the funeral." Their words instantly shifted the tone of the national conversation. Instead of just anger and blame, there was now a call for calm, for reflection, for patience. Experts say moments like this can change public mood in big ways. In past cases, when families spoke out and asked for peace, protests stayed calmer and discussions became more constructive. At the same time, some voices online still pushed for faster answers, asking when investigators would release more findings. Legal experts warned that rushing the process could compromise the case. Collecting digital evidence takes time. One analyst said every phone record, every video clip, every eyewitness account has to be checked carefully. This balance between grief, justice, and public pressure is what made this moment so powerful. The parents didn't just cry at the grave. They turned their pain into a message. People were still talking about it hours later. Throughout the day, TV stations played the clip again and again. Radio hosts talked about the speech and let listeners call in. Some people who called and started crying on the air. Others talked about how they had lost family members and how this moment made them feel like they were being seen. By the afternoon, more supporters had gathered outside the cemetery. Some people brought flowers and candles. A few people quietly began to pray near the entrance. It seemed like the whole place had become a memorial site again. The police kept the peace by directing traffic and making sure it was safe. There were no issues. There was only prayer, silence, and quiet talk. For many people, this wasn't just news. It was something they would remember for a long time. It showed that even when they were sad, people could choose dignity. But it also made everyone curious about what would happen next. Would investigators soon find more proof? Would there be a press conference? Would the parents talk again at a later time? This moment set the stage for what will happen next. The deeper investigation, the public debate, and the answers. The clip of Charlie's parents at the grave and his father's words kept spreading all day. By the evening, nearly every major news outlet had replayed the moment. People who hadn't followed the case before were now watching. Hashtags about Charlie's name and the phrase, "We must not let division take over," stayed in the top trending list for hours. The emotional power of that short speech was undeniable. Talk shows started to argue about what it meant. Some guests said that the family's message could help people relax and keep their minds on finding the truth. Some people. The family's message could also lead to a single panic of problems. The committee said that even when there was love with prayer, they would not leave the truth. It was obvious that the country was split on what to do next. The same split was seen on social media. One side said the parents were strong and didn't let their anger get the best of them. Another group said it was time to ask the government for answers more quickly. One comment that got thousands of likes said, "Patience is good, but waiting too long for answers can be painful." Meanwhile, officials responded quickly. By late afternoon, a spokesperson for the investigation held a short press conference outside the courthouse. They confirmed that evidence review was ongoing and promised an update within the next 2 weeks. Reporters asked whether new security footage had been found. The spokesperson said yes. More angles had been recovered and were under review. They also confirmed that digital data from several devices had been collected and was being analyzed by forensic experts. Legal analysts on TV broke this down for viewers, explaining that cross-checking witness accounts with video timestamps is key to building a strong case. This process can feel slow, one expert said, but it's what ensures the truth comes out in court. Later, while all of this was happening, something beautiful started taking place across the country. Vigils in several cities. People gathered in parks, churchyards, and community centers to hold candlelight events in Charlie's memory. Photos and videos began circulating online. Dozens of candles lined up in the shape of a heart. People standing in silence, some holding signs that said, "Peace for Charlie." At the cemetery itself, more supporters came as night fell. By sunset, there were flowers, candles, and small handwritten notes around the grave. Charlie's parents did not return that night, but friends of the family stayed behind to light candles and make sure the area was cared for. Local reporters said the atmosphere was peaceful. People were talking quietly, some crying, some praying. One man said, "I didn't know Charlie personally, but seeing his parents today, it felt like I needed to come here." The community response was overwhelming. Volunteers show up with hot tea and blankets for those standing outside. A local choir came and sang softly. It was less of a protest and more of a shared moment of healing. The next morning, newspapers featured photos of the vigil on their front pages. Headlines called the moment a nation's pause, and parents turned grief into message of hope. National leaders also released statements. Some praised the parents for calling for peace, saying their words might prevent more division. Others promised to stay focused on the divorce investigation until all facts were public. This event has clearly changed the way people are talking about Charlie's death. For weeks, the conversation was full of anger, frustration, and blame. Now there's still pain but also a sense of unity. Still, not everyone is satisfied. Some advocacy groups are pushing for an independent review to speed up the process. They want transparency and timelines released to the public. The family has not commented on that yet, choosing instead to stay private after the cemetery visit. As days passed, more footage and pictures from that morning surfaced online. You could see new angles of the parents approaching the grave, friends standing nearby, and even the moment his father began speaking. Each clip reignited the discussion. Psychologists interviewed on the news explained why this moment struck such a deep chord. When we see authentic grief, especially from parents, it connects to something universal in us. One expert said it makes the story human again, not just headlines. Across social media, people started sharing personal stories, not just about Charlie but about their own losses. For some, it was the first time they had talked about losing a loved one. The comment sections became spaces where strangers comforted each other. That's why many people say this moment wasn't just about grief, it was about bringing people together. It gave everyone a pause, a reminder that behind every headline is a real family living through pain. But